Hello there, and today we're going to be talking about Checking Out My History by John Agard. So my analysis of Checking Out My History, I'm going to arts war it just like normal. However, in this poem there's not a lot of very clear alliteration which is very easy to analyse. So I'm not going to talk about alliteration today, but instead I'm going to explore techniques and words in a little bit more depth and detail. So, checking out my history, the poet here, John Agard, was born in the Caribbean, but he came over to Britain as a young boy, so he was educated here. And this poem here is where he is examining his own schooling in the UK. He talks about his anger that he felt being exposed to what he felt was an irrelevant British education that didn't examine his own roots and his own heritage. And this shows about the power of education because these restrictions on his education didn't give him the power to create an identity and a voice. So this poem is particularly good if you're going to talk about the power of education, both the power over it and the power it can have. The power of having an identity and a voice because he is so accusatory over the people that kept that from him, but also that identity and that voice then overpowers the limitations he had through his education. It also shows the power of heritage, for he celebrates who he is, he celebrates his background, and that has always had a very powerful impact over him. It also shows the conflict between learning and the learner, what he wanted to learn and what he did learn. But it also shows the conflict between the beauty of the history and the time that it receives. He just talks about his own history in such colourful imagery with such beauty, but in his own curriculum it was glossed over so fast. So the first of Agard's key messages is his detachment that he felt with his own education, and as a result the detachment he then felt with himself. But most importantly, he also has a message about the power of pride in your own identity and how this supersedes any attempt to quash it. So, first technique is the most clear, most obvious one, and that is the repetition of dem all the way through. Now, dem is using his own Creole instead of standard English. Now this shows that his identity and his roots is more powerful than the education he received. His education would have been teaching him to use standard English and speak properly. However, he rejects those lessons and he wants to use what is his own identity and the language of his own mother tongue. Now this reflects the detachment he felt with his British teachers. He just sees them as them. He doesn't call them by sir or miss. He just says them, dem, dem. He just groups them all together in one collective pronoun. This repeating of it also reflects how time and again they tried to deny him, and now time and again he will fight back. All the way through his schooling he was given a limited education, now all the way through his life he will challenge that and fight back. Couple more techniques for you in the absence of alliteration. First of all, we've got this beautiful imagery to describe his own history. In this example I've chosen Hopeful Stream to Freedom River. Now the beauty and the peace of this imagery reflects the beauty of his own history, and this is quite a calm, beautiful imagery as well, talking about how when he is exposed to this learning he feels calm, he feels peaceful, like he's coming home. Now these are consistent nature metaphors throughout this poem, both here when he is talking about Nanny de Maroon, but also when he is talking about Mary Seacole later on. Now these consistent nature metaphors reflect the permanence of their beauty and the wonder of their stories. He also uses this imagery of light quite regularly. We've got fire, woman, healing star and yellow sunrise, and light as connotations of hope and guidance, reflecting how these people have illuminated the poet's true identity through being that light of hope for whoever it was they were supporting and helping back in history. Finally, we've got this analogy of a fairy tale for his education, where he compares it to a cow jumping over the moon. Now this reflects the irrelevance of his education to him, but it also has associations with childish entertainment. So Agard here is mocking the immature belief of his teachers that they could deny him his identity, and he also suggests they underestimated him, almost treating him like a child, babying him with such a poor basic education that didn't allow him to explore himself. So I would normally talk about structure and then rhythm and rhyme separately. However, the two are so closely linked in this poem, it just makes sense to deal with them together. So first of all, in terms of structure, there is a shift in structure all the way through this poem, both between when he's talking about his own history and then when he's talking about the education that he receives. So this reflects the conflict between what he is taught and what he wants to be taught, and the clear divide between the two. And this divide is reflected through the italicised stanzas when talking about his own personal history. Now, when he is not talking about his own history and he's talking about the British and white education, these are longer lines in rhyming couplets. So these long lines reflect the long time spent on this in his education, but it also implies the boredom and frustration he felt as a result of it. Now these are all written in rhyming couplets, which reflects the control and the order placed on British education, how they're trying to straitjacket students into certain learning and certain lessons. This is very different to when he's talking about his own history, and these are shorter lines with heavy enjambment. Now this makes these sections really quick, highlighting the passion and enthusiasm that he has for his own history. Now this speed of it also highlights the prominence of it in his own education, because it's going so quick that reflects how in his own lessons it was rushed over and not celebrated. This has also got quite a random rhyme, some bits rhyme, some bits don't, and this random rhyme reflects his desire to break free from the British education's order and control. Finally, in terms of words, the most prominent ones to me, I think, are these restrictive verbs at the start when he's talking about bandage and blind. Now this reflects how he was limited and restricted by his education and not allowed to be the complete proud man that he is today. But these words also have connotations of injury and sufferance, showing the hurt and the pain that he felt being cut off from his own identity and his heritage. Finally, and I feel it captures the whole essence of what this poem is about, is this last word, this last verb, carving, to describe the aftermath of his education and what he's then gone on to go and do. So if you're carving something, this needs great strength and great force, showing the strength of character that he's needed to defy society despite his education and build his own personal identity and have a voice that he can celebrate. But also something carved is something permanent. If I carve something on a tree, it's going to be there for many, many years. So now his identity is here to stay. This reflects how the power of his identity is far greater than the power of his education and any attempt to try and quash that identity.